joining with God in helping you with your finances, your debt, and your financial future. My name is Orville Thomas, and I'm joined alongside again with Dwayne Anderson. And we're going to take you through this week's lesson, which is the planning for the cycle of life. Planning for the cycle of life. Now, when you say the cycle of life, I consider the cycle of life to be three segments of your life. There are the learning years, then there's the earning years, and there are also the returning years. Now, the learning years is when you are going through a period of your life where you're getting your education. And then your earning years are when you're actually having a job. That's your working years. And if you're not careful, that time of life, it could be the most stressful. A lot of divorce happens during that time of your life, during the earning years. And, of course, there is the returning years when you've retired and you give back to either your family or to God that which you set aside. So we're going to talk about the cycle of life this afternoon. Our text for this week comes from Proverbs 3, verses 9. It says, "Honor the Lord with your possessions and with the first fruits of all your increase. So your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will overflow with new wine." When we talk about new wine, obviously back in the scripture days or the Bible days, the society was more agrarian versus monetized as it is today. So everything they dealt with was referred to as in agricultural terms. So when we talk about our barns being filled with plenty and our vats overflowing with new wine, this is also the blessing that God provides for you. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean monetarily, but it does mean the blessings of life. All right, and our next slide is personal financial planning will enhance your enjoyment of life. It will enhance your enjoyment of life. Some people, we have to say that because when you think about financial planning, sometimes there is a negative connotation associated with that. But we want to make sure it's something that we enjoy when we go through this process as well. Jesus said, "I have come that ye have life and that you have it more abundantly." That's John 10, verses 10. We want everything that we do to be joined with God. And we talked about that in our first week in our introduction. And we want to make sure that's the focus of everything we do here today as well.
I also want to focus on spending less than you earn. It's a basic and necessary step in the journey to achieving long-term financial success. So there's security, financial security. So there's two things, focusing on increasing your income and spending less than what you actually earn. And, you know, when we see what happens to the reason why we are where we are in a financial bind, the main source of financial difficulties is overspending. So we're going to focus today on really trying to limit or reduce spending so that way you're not finding yourself in a financial bind.
Know the state of your business affairs. And everything you do, you should know where you are in life, where you are with your business. And as Dwayne talked about before on last week, you are the CEO of you or your family. So know the state of your business affairs. In Proverbs 27, 23, and 24, it says, "Be diligent to know the state of your flocks and attend to your herds, for riches are not forever, nor does a crown endure to all generations." Riches are not forever. When things are going well, it's a tendency for us to either spend more or not be as frugal, if you will, with that what we have. So we want to make sure we're cognizant of our business affairs. In our lesson this week, we talked about a balance sheet. So we'll give you an example of a balance sheet as we progress through this lesson, and we'll talk a little bit more about a budget as well. I'll let Dwayne talk through a little to us about the balance sheet.
Okay, so on your balance sheet, and I want you to kind of think about your home as, like Orville mentioned before, it's an organization, it's a company, and you are the CEO of that organization. So you want to focus on where your income is coming from. And in this particular slide, you can see the income, the liquid assets, which is what's coming in, you have in your checking and your online savings. You have your taxable assets, which in this case would be a joint brokerage or employer stock. And in Fred and Wilma's situation here, you'll see that they have other tax-qualified assets, and those are things that, like your investments or brokerage accounts, like your Roth IRA, your 401k, health savings account, and a traditional IRA. And if you're not aware, the difference between a Roth IRA is a type of IRA that is already with after-tax money. Traditional IRA is pre-tax money, so that money will be taxed on when the income is taken out of it. They also have some personal property assets. In this particular case, it could be your automobile, your boat, your home furnishings, and then real property assets, which is your actual primary residence. Now, you may have heard people mention in the past, you've heard the term, what is your net worth? And your net worth is essentially all of your total assets minus your long-term liabilities. In this particular case, the mortgage on the home is $400,000, and their total assets is $1.925 million. So their actual liabilities is $400,000, making their total net worth is $1.525 million. It's important to recognize that your home, your actual home, is actually not an asset. If you're continuing to pay down on a monthly payment for it, you're continuing to pay your mortgage on it, if you still owe on the house, then it is considered a liability. However, the good thing about owning a home is that once you're paying on a home, you're paying on something that you can eventually own and something that has the opportunity to increase in equity over time. So in this particular case, we want to focus on a budget. And if you don't have a budget in place, this is probably going to be the foundation of everything we talk about here. Because if you don't know what you have and what's coming in, then you're really not able to make decisions moving forward. So let's take a look at this scenario here where we have a couple with their monthly take-home income. In this particular case, their salary, their wages, their business draw, however you receive your income, for one of them is $2,775, and the other one is also making the same amount at $2,775. You'll see in the numbers there that is a total amount of $7,513.58 pre-tax, but their total home income is $5,550. And so when we move down through the monthly living expenses, you'll see they've already budgeted out everything. They've budgeted out their auto repair, new car. They put together money aside for that. They budgeted out their gas. They budgeted out their cable, TV, satellite fees, if you have Netflix or Hulu, all of those things. Now notice the numbers there for tithe and offering. You'll see that the tithe is at $752, and so if you notice, that has been based off of their gross income, which was the number we saw earlier at $75,1358. And then they went ahead and did 5% for offering as well. If you move down through the list, you'll see all of these things: your electric bill, your groceries, your home, and your health and dental insurance, life insurance, disability insurance. They've budgeted out everything. And if you go all the way down the list, you'll see that they have a total monthly living expenses of $3,852. Now, this is crucial to understand, because if you don't know, once again, if you don't know what's going out, number one, you cannot make the decisions to go ahead and trim spending where it needs to be trimmed. And then also, you really need to analyze and figure out, do I really need some of these items on here? Is this something that I need to maybe either trim or get rid of entirely? If you look over to the next column, you'll see secured debts with the monthly payments. In this particular case, they're renting. Their rental payments are $1,350 for the month, and they have an auto loan of $350. And then you move down to the secured debt, and the difference between the secured debt and unsecured debt: secured debt is something that's secured by an asset. So, for example, whether it's a home, whether it's an automobile, those are assets that are secured by an actual item of worth. Your unsecured debt is something that there's really nothing tangible tied to it other than the fact that you have debt. So if you look at the unsecured debt, which is going to be your student loans and your credit cards and the hospital bills in this case, you'll notice that they have a total monthly payment of $300. So in summary, their total take-home is $5,550. Their living expenses is $3,852. They have secured debt payments of $1,700 and unsecured debt payments of $300. And in this particular case, they're actually running at a deficit every single month. Now, this is why it's important to build this budget, because you may be running at a deficit and you're not aware of it, or you may not be realizing the fact that, you know what, I'm not where I want to be in terms of having disposable income at the end of the month. So this is an opportunity for you to analyze it, for you to make changes. Do not be scared or afraid or embarrassed if your number is in the negative. That's actually quite common. But this is an opportunity for you to really grasp where you are and move forward in making the right decisions.
Yeah, this is very important. With everything we talk about, most of you are joining in because you want to do something different with your finances. But if you don't start at the basis, which is the budget, then you don't know where you are, you don't know where you're going. This is your plan. We like to call it a spending plan. Now, about 3 weeks from now, we'll spend even a lot more time on showing you exactly how to do this. But we encourage you to do this on your own. There's so many apps out there now where it can help you in composing a budget in and of itself. So we're going to encourage you to do that. But I did want to spend a little time on this because everything we talk about going forward is affected by what you have coming in. And like Dwayne said, don't be shy about putting everything in your budget. If you spend $200 a week eating out, put it there. Don't feel like, oh, let me just put 50 because that's where I want to be. No, you're spending the 200 or 250 eating out. Put that on the list. That way, when you come up with your disposable income, you can see like this example that this person is $302 in the negative. Then if we use this example, we can go back in and say, what can I take away? In this example, you'll see a membership, a gym membership of $11. That person obviously is obviously a Planet Fitness member versus if you were at maybe another gym where it was $40 a month. Then you can make decisions, okay, maybe we need to move from our regular gym membership to this gym membership. If I'm spending on groceries, this example here has the individuals for $800 a month on groceries. So maybe I need to reduce my grocery. Maybe I need to stop shopping at a particular store and go to a different store. You want to put everything in your budget so then you can say to yourself again, where can we reduce? Now, some things you can't change as far as your unsecured debt and your secured debts, but you can adjust how you attack those debts and how you pay them off. Again, we're going to show you how to get out of debt in about 7 years or less at the completion of our time together. So this is very key. One point I want to leave with you is that put everything in the budget. Go out, create a budget. Tonight may be the best time to do so. Get together with your wife or get together, with yourself if it's just yourself, and then create a budget and then determine what you have coming in and know what you have going out. That's very important. So we want to make sure that's covered today as well. We want to make sure you get your questions in today as well. So we want to remind you of that as we'll move to question and answer period time in about 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, I mean, that's really important, Orville, where we talk about analyzing where you are. And the goal of this program, obviously, is to help you becoming more faithful, not just with your money, but having a better stewardship of the money that you're receiving. And, and it's important to really understand your debt situation and to reduce and lower your debts. And we'll be talking about that, getting out of debt in a much shorter period of time, because I think that's the issue now is a lot of people are they can't see their way out of the current situation they're in. So we definitely want to help.
Right. People are struggling with school loans and probably have given up on even making payments because they're so deep in that school loan. Maybe they have $100,000 in loan plus a house loan. And sometimes you look at that and think that it's almost impossible for me to get out of that debt. But again, if you start here with creating the budget, we'll show each and every one of you how to get out of where you are and get to a better point in life. And I wanted to point back at, we are a faith-based organization. We all that are listening are mainly faith-based. So we want to encourage you to start out with the tithe and the offering. You say, well, that person is giving off the gross. That's putting God first. When you hear about putting God first, and then you're able to, if you list everything, and some people say, well, I can't give like that. Then that also gives you an opportunity to look at each point in your life and see where can I reduce here or there to return a faithful tithe and a generous offering to the Lord.
So the balance sheet is used to determine the state of your personal or family finances. Once again, if you are the CEO of you, if you're running your own home organization, then you really need to understand what it is. Imagine if you went into your employer, and I've used this example many times, and they told to you, hey, we don't have a paycheck for you this week, and you said, well, why? And they said, well, we really didn't keep a budget this week. We didn't keep a budget this month, and we found out that we spent a lot more than we took in, and we can't afford to pay you. Imagine how upset you would be, because that organization wasn't really doing their due diligence and really making sure that they're taking care of their finances. So the same thing applies at home.
So financial goals. Should we have financial goals? The answer to that question is yes. You want to have financial goals. We want to pay off the car this month, or we want to pay off the car this year. Next year, we want to purchase a home. 2 years from now, we want to go on a great vacation. You want to have these goals set. So we'll talk a little bit about goals.
People without a financial plan live paycheck to paycheck, and if you are finding that you are living paycheck to paycheck, it's highly likely that you do not have a financial plan. And so the equivalent of an existent lifestyle, which leads many to despair and in many cases to depression. Couples and singles should establish short and long-term financial goals. So if you're a couple that's watching together, if you're an individual, you're by yourself, you should really sit down and figure out what is your short-term and what is your long-term financial goals. If you don't have an answer to that, then now is a really good time to start and start developing a plan for reaching those goals.
And the key is, again, the couple should do this together. This shouldn't be one thing that I'm doing and the wife is doing something different. This is important. You have one income. The income should be viewed as one income when it comes into the home, whether it's the wife or the husband making it together. It should be viewed as one, just like a corporation. Maybe it's coming from receiving, it's coming from shipping, but it's all coming in, and then they determine what can be spent out. That's important. 1 Corinthians 10, verse 31 says, "Therefore, whether you eat or whatever you drink, do it all to the glory of God." And I believe that also means about dealing with our finances. Whatever you're doing with your finances, do it to the glory of God. Lord, should I purchase a car this month? Should I purchase this home this month? Put everything before God, because when we're in financial difficulties, who do we turn to? We turn to God. But when all is well, we try to make those decisions on our own. There are many factors that affect the daily living habits and financial choices. Your employment situation, however, probably affects them the most. And your income level, the business associates you may have, and your spare time really determines the result and the leisure time you also have as well. So that's important. The education and career choice you make are also very important as well. There's a table we have on the screen right now. I'll let Dwayne run through that real quick as we show it on the screen, about the estimated living earnings for workers.
Yeah, and this is also indicates the importance of education, right?
Sure.
You know, and this is generally speaking, this is obviously not going to be the same for everyone, but, you know, a non-high school graduate over the course of their life will earn a little bit over $1 million. As you move down through the table, a high school graduate, about 1.4. If you have some college education, about 1.675. If you get your bachelor's at college, looking at north of 2.2 million. And then if a professional degree, whether it's a master's degree or a PhD, will help you get over that $4 million mark. So, you know, we're not going to spend a ton of time highlighting the importance of education, but that is important to increasing your income over time.
Definitely. And then there's the opportunity cost and money management. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We had some questions about investing and things of that nature. Saving and investing for future reduces the amount we can spend now, obviously, on living expenses and entertainment. So sometimes that's viewed as a negative. But however, there must, and I stress that, there must be an income stream that will provide for our needs when we're no longer able to work. So that's very important to plan now for retirement as well. We'll talk a little bit about money management documents, money managed documents, necessary documents. I'll let Dwayne run through those.
So we mentioned earlier about the balance sheet. I think it's also important to have a goal sheet. I personally keep my goal sheet on my iPad. I look at it on a consistent basis, because if you don't know where you're going, then you won't know how to get there. So it's important to have your goals laid out before you, your cash flow sheet, your written budget, and then your savings plan and your retirement plan. And if you don't have those things in order, those are important to get all of those in line. And these forms are provided in the worksheet, and I think Orville handed these are accessible through email. If you don't have that, please text us, let us know, and we'll get you a copy into your email inbox.
Yeah, but all those that registered, we want to make sure we get that out to you. If you don't have it already, we'll make sure we get that to you this afternoon. But by doing a balance sheet at the beginning of the year, you can see changes in your net worth. We showed you the net worth of that individual in our example of about $1.5 million. That's very unusual, but there are some people like that. But most of us may have a negative net worth. So that may give us an opportunity to see more improvement as we put things on paper going forward. Some of those other documents that you may need to have in your home file are the personal and employment records, tax records, financial service records, credit records, consumer purchase records and warranties, insurance and investment records, estate planning, and retirement records. We're going to talk a little bit about estate planning as we go into our weeks ahead as well. For those of you that don't have a will or a trust, we want to make sure each and every one of us that are tuned in has a will and trust. And we'll discuss that in further lessons as well. Other documents, birth, marriage certificates, CDs, stocks and bonds, copy of your will, of course, serial numbers and photos of all your valuables, adoption and custody papers, if that's applicable. Debt is definitely bad. We do know that, I hope. But there are many things bad about debt. I'll let Dwayne cover a little bit about those.
Yeah, and I just want to backtrack just a little bit there. Debt,
Sure.
in most cases, is generally bad. I mean, you may have heard the terminology, there's good debt, and that's usually debt that's applied to something that is revenue generating. But for the most cases, debt generally is bad. And if you're generating a substantial amount of debt and there's no revenue coming in from that debt that you've created, then it can be very difficult. Debt is attached with an interest rate. So in other words, you're not just you not just have the principal balance that you have, but you also have the interest payments that are tied to that. And we'll go over that in further lessons of how that can seriously impact your financial goals. Personal bankruptcies are at an all-time high, with more than 30,000 U.S. families filing for bankruptcy protection every week. Over the last 30 years, the United States has been transformed by its balance of payments deficits from the world's largest creditor into now the world's most heavily indebted nation. We are a nation in debt, all the way from the homes, the individual homes, all the way up to the government level.
Definitely. So which way for the Christian? Which way for the Christian? 1 John 2 verse 15 says, "Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him." Also, right after that, 1 John 2:16, "For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world." Jesus wants us to be a light to the world. That's Matthew 5 verse 14. And salt that gives flavor to life in verse 13. Too often in the management of money, however, the world salts us more than we salt it. That's why we're in the debt situations we are. Many Christians are deep in debt, like people who don't know Christ. And we don't want that for the Christian. So that's why we're going to make sure each and every one of you that's tuned in and your families get to a point where debt is no more. We have inside information, though. In 2 Peter 3 verses 10, it says, "But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Both to the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up." That's 2 Peter 3 verse 10. So everything we have, everything we're spending on, that nice vehicle, that nice home that you have, at the end of the day, it's all going to be burned up. So make sure it doesn't stress you out and leave you, in a state of mind that makes it very uncomfortable to live and to deal with work.
Can I just add as well to
Sure.
Orville, being out of debt is ministry.
Exactly.
If you're out of debt, if you're in a situation where you are taking care of your financials, it's actually a great ministry. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult to minister to people when you are deep in debt.
Exactly.
It's very hard to share the love of Jesus Christ and what he can do for you and how he can deliver you when you are drowning in debt. Mm-hmm. So I truly believe that God wants us to get out of debt here. And I think it's important that we take all of the steps necessary to doing that. We're going to talk about the 3 reasons for financial problems. One of the biggest things is just ignorance. It's one of the beliefs where if we just continue to kick the can down the road, or if we pretend like it doesn't exist, then it will go away. But many people, including college graduates, and I was one of them, are financially illiterate. They don't really know how money works. They were never exposed to the biblical or even secular principles of money management. Number 2, greed and selfishness. In response to advertising and personal wants, people live way beyond their means. They are not willing to live in, drive, or wear what they can really afford. And we live in a credit society now. I don't know if you know, but the credit industry spends billions of dollars trying to get you hooked onto getting into debt. If you have decent credit, you'll probably see mail show up in your mailbox on a consistent basis. So those are all important things. An unfortunate tragedy is number 3. Experience a serious illness without having health insurance, or being abandoned by a spendthrift marriage partner, going through a national disaster, being born and raised in abject poverty. These are all things that can really have a financial impact.
Obviously. So that's why we want to make sure we're planning for the future. We talk about the lesson being planning for the cycle of life. Remember, most of us may be in those earning years, but the earning years are the most stressful years. That's why we want to give you ideas and steps to make sure we are comfortable at this time of life, when it can also be very, very, very tough on the psyche of individuals as well. So to close this segment out, before we start taking your questions, there are 7 biblical principles. One is God is the owner of everything. We have to understand that. To begin getting out of financial turmoil, you have to understand who's the owner of everything. If you connect with God and have him to determine what you should do, what you should buy, when you should buy it, then you'll be that much more better for it. Number 2 is God in his wisdom and counsel must have first place in your life. If you put him first, then he'll put you first. If you don't put him in as all, then he'll do the same for you. Number 3 is your purpose in life, like Dwayne mentioned, is to glorify God. You can't glorify God if you're always struggling in debt and cannot make monthly payments, on cars that you might have extended yourself on, or homes that you might have extended yourself on as well. Prosperity, number 4, is having what you need when you need it. Some people always speak about prosperity gospel. Well, if you look at prosperity this way, it's a good thing. It's having what you need when you need it. When you need to make your payment, isn't it nice to know that you have it? Not necessarily to know that I want this particular car and I can afford it, but God says he'll take care of all your needs, not necessarily all your wants. Number 5 is debt is bad. We talked about that. And again, there's a lesson, I believe it's lesson 5, that we're going to spend entirely talking about debt. And verses number 6, the tithe is the minimum testimony of our Christian commitment. If you don't return a tithe, then you can't really say you're thankful for everything God does, because returning a tithe is the minimum testimony of your connection with Christ. And finally, number 7, everyone must give an account to God of his money management. Everyone must do that. When we talk about the well-known text, Matthew 25:21, well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things, I will make you ruler over many. That's particularly talking about finances. That's not talking about you being spiritually great, which a lot of times it's denoted that way, or it's misconstrued that way. But it's particularly talking about your finances. Well done, good and faithful servant. So if we want to hear that at the end of time, then we want to make sure we're following up with our finances, doing those things that God would be pleased with when it comes to our financial discipline. We're going to move to now then any questions that come in. So again, our number is on the screen for those of you that have questions out there that want to be answered. So I'm going to encourage each and every one of you to ask the questions that you have as they flow in. I'll look to our screen now for those to come up. All right. While we're waiting for those questions to come up, one other thing I just wanted to mention is that, all right, so we do have some questions that are coming in. I'll go through some of these. Do payday loans help your credit if you always pay them on time? Do payday loans help your credit if you always pay them on time? Dwayne?
Well, I will start by saying this. I don't know a ton about payday loans, but I do know in many situations that they can be very very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Put it in the best way I can. And essentially, what a payday loan is for someone to take an advance on a paycheck, and get some of their money or most of their money up front, and then pay some sort of charge on the back end when they pay it back. Here's the challenge I see with payday loans. It always feels like you're playing catch up.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have enough money generally to make a payment or to pay your bills, you're essentially even getting less than what you're getting paid with that payday loan. My understanding is that payday loans do not help your credit score at all. They're not reported to the 3 credit bureaus, and so it does not help your credit at all. The only time it does anything to your credit is when you do not make the payments, and it gets reported to a collection agency, and then the collection agency will then go ahead and report that to the credit bureau. So getting payday loans does not help in any way, shape, or form in terms of helping your credit score. And generally, you want to try and stay away from them. I understand life circumstances come up, but if you're in a situation where you are getting payday loans, I really would consider looking for ways to supplement your income instead of taking the payday loans up front.
Yeah, where are payday loans located? I mean, in the most destitute areas of the city, you'll see payday loans in more urban areas, but if you go to a more affluent area, there are no payday loan centers there. It's almost like liquor stores. They're always where they know individuals that need them the most would be. So again, try to stay away from those.
Yeah, and if you look at the interest charges on some of these payday loans or some of these loans, they're incredibly high. I mean, much higher than you can ever imagine on a home loan or a car loan. They're just incredibly high, and you're really just robbing Peter to pay Paul. You're digging a ditch, larger and larger. You're getting less money than what you're even getting from before, and if that wasn't enough to pay, then you're going to be even getting into a bigger hole. So, if you're finding that you have to use payday loans on a consistent basis, you really want to look for alternate means of income to help supplement what you're doing.
We have another question coming in. With the current volatility of the market today, should I invest in a mutual fund or keep my money in a piggy bank at home?
Well, this is an investing question, and we're not going to get too much into investing questions. Every individual is different. Every situation is different, and you would really want to sit down with someone one-to-one. But I will tell you this, keeping money where there's no opportunity for growth is essentially going backwards because you have to deal with inflation. And so over time, things get more valuable. If you can think back to 20, 30 years ago, what was the cost of a car back then? What was the cost of a house back then?
Loaf of bread.
Yeah. So if you're not keeping up with inflation, keeping your money in a bank where there's no opportunity for growth, you're actually losing money.
Another question: why does it seem? Why does it seem some of us cannot save money? And is it a commitment issue? Why does it seem some of us cannot save money? And is it a commitment issue?
Yeah, this is a different answer for different people.
Sure.
The reason why a lot of people can't save money is they really can't. The cost of things have gone up. Unfortunately, in many situations, the wages have not gone up to compensate for that. So, in many cases, there are some people out there who really are trying to do well. However, it's very difficult for them to do well because the cost of everything goes up. And then, of course, if there's no money saved, you get expenses and unexpected events that come up as well, causing them to not be able to do that. And I also think it's also a lack of education, a lack of understanding how money works, a lack of really understanding the importance of investments and enhancing your income and things of that nature. I've found out in my experiences that people who are usually the wealthiest have more than one stream of income. And so if you're just depending on your job, or if you're just depending on one stream of income, that can be very hurtful because the cost of things go up. So I think it's a couple of reasons. I think it's different for everybody, and you really want to kind of find out what the issue is and deal with it.
And that also goes back to our budget. If you budget everything out, then you can look at individual items and say, okay, I'm not saving because I'm spending so much on my entertainment or my phone bill. I'm spending, $700 and I'm putting on a payment plan for a new iPhone when I could have just gotten a PCS phone, Metro PCS, and save a little on it there. Next question is, should I still invest even when I am deeply in debt? That's a no. When you're in debt, just think of it this way. If your debt percentage is, let's say your credit card at Macy's is 19%, and you are going to invest in something, no investment is going to give you about 19% return. Just think about that. So you're always going to be in debt. So ideally, any income you have coming in, you put that towards the greatest interest, which in this case would be the debt, which is 19% in my example here. But the answer is no. That's why we kind of shy away from investments a lot. I see another question coming up. Will investments be discussed? There's a topic in our book that is totally about investments. We'll talk about that. But for the most part, most of our listeners are mainly in debt. So we want to encourage everybody to get out of debt. Then there are many ways and a lot of different means that you can invest and get returns on your money. But if your debt is, these high percentages, we don't really want to be there just yet. But yes, we will discuss investments in the future as well.
I want to add, too, that if you really think of it, going back to that question about investing while you're in debt, think of it like this. If you have debt payments and your effective interest rate on that debt is 25%, or let's 18%, choose a little bit of a smaller number there.
Sure.
If you cannot somehow find some sort of investment that's going to pay you well north of 18%, then you're effectively losing money. So it's really important to get into a situation where you have your debt situation under control before you can really start investing. Because you will always be running at a negative if you're paying 14% over here but only making 7% over there.
Exactly. Another question. My husband tries to put too much money in church, and he says God is telling him to do it. I think it's too much. What should I do? Well, I'll start out with that. So this goes back to when we talked about doing things together. So husband and wife should come together, not only what we're spending, but also what we're returning as a tithe and an offering. Now, there's no discussion about the tithe because the tithe is only 10%. So if you're at the 8% level, you haven't returned a tithe just yet. You're giving a donation, but you haven't returned a tithe. But to answer your question, or to at least partly answer it, is that you want to come together as a unit, husband and wife. And then we would determine, okay, I'm giving a tithe. How much can we afford to return also in an offering? Or then, look, God has blessed us so much that this is what we want to return together as an offering. So that should be something you all discuss. So the second question is, what should I do? You all sit down together, not only with, the positive side. This may, unfortunately be a negative side of a conversation. And just to make sure we understand, most times you talk about money, it's always going to be, most times, it may be a negative time. So we want to make sure that time is something more enjoyable. So do it when there's an opportunity for enjoyment. Dwayne, I'll let you answer that.
I really think that this is a little bit more of a relationship question than anything else. I really think that, in this particular case, the husband and the wife really need to sit down and discuss their goals together. I think we talked earlier about having combined goals where you can both come together and really kind of figure out a strategy moving forward. I don't think God wants someone to put all of their money into the tithe, or offering, where they can't even live or exist. So I really think that is a situation where you need to sit down and have a conversation and really kind of discuss the best steps moving forward for your relationship.
Sure. And again, that just depends on where you are in life. Again, like Dwayne always alludes to, everybody's at different levels of life. I'm not sure where you all are in life, how comfortable you are with your money, how much money you have coming in, how much disposable income you have. But if there's disposable income to be, doled out where you wanted to give more to the church, then I don't see where an issue is there other than you all just coming together and agreeing on that. Obviously, if you're not able to do other things, you can't pay this bill or that bill, or you're reducing the amount of other things because you're putting so much in the church, then that's, again, an opportunity for you all to discuss that on a one-on-one basis. We'll make sure all the documents get over to your emails as well. I saw that come in as a question also.
Yeah, I think there's someone that's saying, is there a book that we can get for this class? If you text your email address to the number where it says text your questions, we'll go ahead and get a PDF copy of this book out to you through your email.
I left school 20 years ago, and they just sent me a bill, not federal, from the school itself. Is there a statute of limitations, or do I have to pay it?
Well, if it's a bill coming from the school, you definitely want to check out the validity of it. But if there's money still owed, then you definitely want to get to the bottom of it and pay it. I don't think there's a statute of limitations when it comes to debt.
Right.
A situation like that. So you really need to find out where that's coming from and backtrack and trace it and find out exactly what it is. Debt really never ever goes away. It's in many cases sometimes they charge things off and it shows up on your credit report for several years, but it never really goes away. So if it's from your school, reach out to them, find out where it came from, and try and get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, and again, that's one thing. We'll talk about bankruptcy later on, but there are also opportunities for, any debt that is a student loan cannot be done away with in bankruptcy. There's a lot of other things that will go away, but bankruptcy does not get rid of your student loans. And we'll talk about bankruptcy. I mean, there's a scripture that talks about us repaying our debts. So at the end of the day, we do want to repay all of our debts. And again, if you line all those up in a budget, in a spreadsheet, we'll show you how to get rid of all your debts. I've had people who had, $200,000, $300,000 in loans, school loans, that were able to get on a plan to get out of debt. So don't look at your situation as something that's undoable. You're only making $70,000 a year as a couple, and your debts together maybe $300,000, and you think, well, we'll never get out of debt. But if you think that way, it'll never happen. But if you join together with the natural and the supernatural, the natural being you putting together a budget, trusting God, and then supernatural putting God in charge of your finances, I guarantee you this will be the opportunity for you to be able to get out of debt as well.
It's really about having a mindset and a focus on what you want to achieve. Getting out of debt is achievable, and I think everyone that's listening or watching right now really needs to understand that no matter what your debt situation is, that getting out of debt is achievable, but it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen, without you making much effort. In some cases, you may have to take radical life choices. Mm-hmm. You may need to get rid of a car. You may need to get rid of a house. You may need to do a lot of things that you're not comfortable with to get rid of that debt. And you really got to ask yourself, what is worth sacrificing here so that I could find myself in a better financial situation? I've met some people who've said, well, you know what, I've got this debt and I'm just going to die with it. Mm-hmm. And that's an unfortunate mindset to have. Getting out of debt is achievable, and you'll be surprised when you start moving in that direction, when you start going towards paying off the debt, when you start putting a plan in place. Things will happen. You'll start finding other areas of income. You'll start really changing your mindset on how you approach getting out of this debt, and you'll get there a lot faster than you ever would have imagined. And not only that, but you've developed skills now how to generate more income and to be able to pay off debt. So you've really got to start with developing the correct mindset and moving forward in that direction.
When I go to Credit Karma, I only see accounts that still have a balance that are open. What happened to the closed accounts? And do they take it off your credit report after a certain amount of years?
Yeah, I'm not a credit specialist, but my understanding is that over a certain period of time, certain accounts can be removed off the account. I know that things like mortgage foreclosures and things like that, mm-hmm. After about 7 years, they can be removed off your account. So you may want to contact the credit bureaus and get more clarity on that regarding the closed accounts. But that's definitely something for a credit specialist.
Definitely. We want to make sure we're when it deals with credit. One of the questions that I saw also was, my credit is not good. I'm not able to open a credit card. So in order to rebuild credit, one way to do that, if you're not able to get a traditional credit card, is to create a secured card. And what's a secured account or a secured credit card? Secured credit card is basically your money. So if you have $500 cash, to rebuild your credit, you could go to most banks, put that $500 on a card. They'll send you a card, which is basically your $500 as a loan, basically, on a credit card. Now, the good thing about that is it's your money, but also the other part to that, to rebuild your credit, is that that card now reports to the 3 main credit bureaus, just like if you had traditional credit card. So now remember, this is your money. This is your $500 or $200 or whatever it is you can put towards it. And now you're creating and giving yourself an opportunity to rebuild your credit, and get yourself back into a position where you can now start applying for the home loan or the car loan and things of those nature. But again, it has to be some area of your life where you start doing things differently. So that's why we talked about on July 4th in our first lesson, was to try to refrain from credit for a period of about 12 weeks. Just not open up any new credit. Try not to get anything on credit anymore.
Yeah, I just want to highlight what Orville was saying there about the secured credit cards. Those are a great option for those that are not able to get traditional credit cards and you want to build credit. In fact, I would highly recommend, if you have young children who are maybe starting off in college or even starting off in their, earlier in their careers, that they open up secured credit cards as opposed to the unsecured credit cards, so they can actually develop a credit account using their money. So that's a really great way to start, and really helping you with building up credit. Credit is one of those things where it's a little bit tricky to understand, and so you do want to have that credit profile, but you don't want to get yourself in a financial or debt situation doing that.
Another question was, should I have to pay or should I pay tithe or offering off of child support? The answer to that is no. The child support, the payee, should be the one that would be doing any of the donations off of that end. So any income that you're receiving from child support, that shouldn't have to be returned a tithe or an offering. We also mentioned last week, but I got a couple follow-up questions about, do I need to pay off of the Social Security? I'm retired now. Do I need to return a tithe or an offering off of Social Security? When you give off the gross income of your increase, your salary, you've already returned a tithe off of everything that you've received. Remember, Social Security comes out. That's one of the things that come out. So that's the benefit of returning a tithe off of the gross over your earning years. That way, when you get to your returning years, when the Social Security check comes, you can enjoy that Social Security check without having the overarching feeling of, do I need to return a tithe or offering off of that? So I hope that helped answer some of those questions that we got from our retired individuals. We may have just given you a pay raise as well.
I also think when it comes to giving, you really want to do it from what God has impressed upon you to do. If you are in a situation where you paid tithe over the course of your life, and now you're receiving Social Security checks, and maybe you're receiving money from your retirement accounts that you've already paid tithe on as well, and you're doing well, you're financially doing well, and you still feel areas where you can give. Please don't feel that well, I've already given, I don't need to give. Giving comes from the heart, and God wants us to see a heart that longs to give to Him at any stage in our lives. So, don't look at it as something where I already gave, I don't need to give again.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to God about it. Have a conversation with God about it and say, listen, I'd really like to give. How can I give?
There's a blessing in giving. Always remember that. And when we say giving, we just generally speaking in giving. There's many people that have given, not necessarily to the church. We like to discuss the church, but when you just give, there's a blessing in giving. It feels good when you give. I mean, if you give, somebody said it feels better to give than to receive. And that's true. I mean, and I want to try to get everybody to partner with what we're talking about over these next 12 weeks. There's many individuals that have gone through these lessons over the last 5 years or so. And all of them can attest to the blessings that have come to them when they've put God first, return a faithful tithe and offering, and also connected God with their financial decisions, what they should purchase, when they should purchase it, how much should they pay for it. If you do that with everything you do in your finances, pray for your finances daily, I guarantee you that you will see a connection and a blessing in everything you do financially. Another question, even on a secured card, it is suggested to stay below 30% usage or so in order to keep using 80% of your own money.
Yeah, this is one of those credit questions again, and I'm not I'm not a credit specialist. Now, generally speaking, it is good to keep your credit accounts below around 30 to 33% of the balance that's in there. I'm not entirely sure about the secured credit accounts. I would imagine that would be true for that as well. The purpose of a credit card to the credit bureaus is to, number one, indicate that you can pay back your debts on a timely manner. And then they also want to make sure that you're not spending or using too much of that credit, which would indicate that you have some sort of financial issue. So they want to see consistent spending, and they also want to see you keep that balance low, saying that I have the credit, I can use the credit, and I pay back responsibly, but I don't necessarily need it. They want to know that you're able to make those payments, and that's what allows for you to get better or higher credit scores. Remember, the credit score is just an indication to the bank indicating that this is someone that we can trust with the money that we're lending them, and someone that can pay back. So, I don't know for sure about the secured credit card, but if I had to take a guess, I would imagine the same rules would apply.
Definitely. I would think that was the case as well, because they're reporting to the same credit bureaus at that point. So I'm thinking they would also do the same thing where that's concerned. Another question we had was looking to pay off my home. We talked about paying off homes or debts in general in about 7 to 10 years. Most home loans are at 30 years. It is very doable to do that. We'll, again, show you how to do that in upcoming lessons. The key is when you purchase a home is to all the benefits of paying off that home are mainly in the beginning. So if you recently purchased a home within last 3 years, there's a lot of benefits in paying that home off sooner. Same thing with a car. You're in the market for purchasing a car. One thing that I'll tell you is when you do purchase a car, you never want to show your hand of how much money you have to put down until you got the final offers from that dealer. The key is, and we'll show you an example of this in coming lessons as well, in lesson 7 when we talk about making major purchases. But if you're going to purchase let's just call it a $15,000 car, and you have $5,000 that you may want to put down as a down payment. The ideal is to be out of debt soon. The Bible says we shouldn't be in debt more than 7 years. So if you have $5,000 and you say, okay, let's put that $5,000 towards the $15,000 car, now we're working with $10,000. If you do that, you'll still be in debt over the terms of the loan, which let's say the terms of the loan are 60 months. You'll still be in debt over 60 months versus if you find out what the minimum amount that I can put down on that car. You and your wife or yourself know that you have $5,000. You don't need to share that with them. If you can get away with putting down $500 just to make the deal, then on your first payment that you send, once you get your letter in the mail, then you return, instead of your $350 on that first payment, now give them $4,500. You paid $500 out of the $5,000. Now for that first payment, give them $4,500. So if you divide $350 into $4,500, my math isn't that good right now, but that's roughly about 12 months. Let's call it 12 months. Now you've taken off 12 months off of that 60-month loan. I hope you followed me on that without a graphic on the screen.
Well, I think, and not to cut you off, Orville, this is something we're going to talk about. We're actually going to spend an entire lesson talking about. We're running out of time. That's why I'm cutting Orville off here. But that is a little trick of the trade, knowing when to putting down as minimum as possible, and then loading up on the front end of those years where the interest is highest. We're going to spend an entire class talking about that. It's really powerful because you can do the same thing with your home loans, and it can get you out of debt much quicker, paying less in interest payments and shortening the years. So, I didn't want to get you. Sure. I didn't want to cut you off.
I get excited about it. I know. We both get excited.
I know.
We
get excited about that, but that's really a trick of the trade, something that a lot of people don't know about, and something we're going to teach you.
We thank you again for joining. We're going to encourage you to continue to send your texts. We try to answer these questions throughout the week as well. We'll join you here next week. We'll make sure we get those PDFs. We'll probably put that on the Patmos website so you can download it by yourself. And we encourage you to join us on next Sabbath as well. Same time, 3:30, when we continue with faith and finance. Thanks for joining us.